So today we're going to keep reading Mango's Mischief and Tales of Friendship, stories from India, written by Chitra Soundar. So I want you to think back to what you listened to yesterday, and think about what you know about Prince Veera and Suku and how they've been very clever at solving cases so far. So let's see what cases they're presented with next. First, we're going to read the case of the greedy moneylender. Prince Veera had a busy schedule during the day. He had to get up very early to go swimming. After breakfast, he studied mathematics, science, and economics. After lunch, he practiced archery, horseback riding, and wrestling. On Wednesday, Suku was expected to join Veera for his morning swim. Veera waited at the riverbank, but there was no sign of his friend. Veera swam alone. He expected Suku to join him for breakfast, but again he was disappointed. "Where is Suku?" Veera asked his mother. "Maybe he is needed at the farm today, son," said the queen. The whole day passed and there was no sign of Suku. Veera couldn't wait any longer. He decided to go find him. Veera rode his white horse through the wide streets of Himpur. His personal guards rode behind him. The streets were lined with neem and banyan trees. Veera went past the village temple and the lotus lake, and then he crossed the bridge over the lake. The streets were narrower now and the houses smaller. Large corn and paddy fields were dotted with farmhouses. "Look, the prince is here to see Suku," said a man looking up from his work. The people who lived in Suku's neighborhood were not surprised. Veera came often to visit Suku and spent a lot of time playing in the streets. If he was not wearing expensive clothes or jewelry, or if there were no guards around in the area, they would not realize it was Prince Veera playing hide and seek on the street with the other boys. Veera dismounted from his horse outside Suku's parents' house. He knocked on the door and Suku's father opened it. "Welcome, my dear prince," said Suku's father. "Good evening, sir. Where is my friend Suku?" asked the prince. "He has gone away on a short trip," said Suku's father. "What sort of trip?" asked the prince. "He never mentioned anything." "It was quite sudden, your majesty. He had to leave this morning." Prince Veera looked around. Suku's clothes were still there. His bag and shoes were there too. "All his things are here," he said. "Please tell me what is going on." Suku's father couldn't hold back his tears any longer. "The greedy moneylender has taken my boy away, your majesty. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. Neither did Suku." "How much do you owe the moneylender?" asked Prince Veera. 25 silvers, just 25 silvers. But I don't have that money, and I won't until I complete my harvest and sell my crops in the market." "Who is this moneylender?" asked the prince. "He is very heartless." "Angar is his name," said Suku's father, and he explained. "Angar comes from a family of moneylenders. He charges heavy interest on the money he lends. He even leases utensils and jewelry for weddings, and he takes away people's belongings when they are unable to pay the interest. He is very greedy, your majesty." "I am going to do something about this," said the prince. "But Suku is still with them," said Suku's father. "I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want anything to happen to my son, your majesty." "Get me a bag of 25 silvers," Veera said to his guard, "and get my friend back." Then to Suku's parents he said, "I'll teach the moneylender a lesson he will never forget." Suku's parents refused the money at first, but Prince Veera urged them to take it. After a lot of discussion, they finally agreed to accept the prince's help in bringing their son back. The next day, Suku returned home from the moneylenders, then headed straight to the palace with a bag of sweet potatoes and guavas. "Thank you," he said. "You have been very kind to us. My father will repay the money after the harvest." "Never mind, Suku," said Prince Veera. "I couldn't wait until the harvest to beat you at horseback riding or archery, could I?" "Ha! To beaten, you mean," said Suku. "You can't wait to lose." "We'll see about that. What happened at the moneylender's house?" asked the prince. "Did he hurt you at all?" No, he just made me do all his chores, said Suku. He made me count the money, make tea for him, and even wash his clothes. But that was easy. He had only 2 shirts and 2 dhaotis. Didn't you say he was rich? Yes, he is, but he doesn't spend money. He eats only 1 meal a day to save his silvers. That is pure greed, said Prince Vera. Maybe he is saving the money for a reason. I don't think any reason is good enough to swindle people out of their possessions, said Suku. He makes people give up their hard-earned things and money just to fill his coffers. Does he have any children? No children, no family, said Suku. Not even a pet. He lives alone, counts his money, eats, sleeps, and snores. He doesn't even have anyone to collect his dues. If people return the money late, he charges more interest. We have to teach him a lesson, my friend, said Prince Vera. We can't let him continue to cheat anymore. You mean report him to your father's court? Asked Suku. I don't think we can do that. People who borrow from him sign a paper that says they agree to his terms. Your father will throw the case out when he sees the papers. But that's not fair, said the prince. We have to teach him a lesson. How about a bit of Vera treatment? Are you ready for some fun? Then Vera whispered a plan to his friend. Right now, I want you to think about how the author is creating tension and excitement in the story. How is the author making you want to read more of the story? I want you to think about that, and you're going to answer a question about it after we read. The next day, dressed as an ordinary farmer's boy, Vera set off to see the moneylender. No one noticed him as he walked down the street and turned right at the village square onto a road lined with beautiful magnolia trees. The fragrance was wonderful. Angar, the moneylender, lived at number 77. A large statue of a white elephant stood outside the door. No one could miss that, thought Vera as he knocked. A thin, scrawny man opened the door. I'm here to see Angar, the moneylender, said Vera. What for? Barked the man. To borrow some cookware for my sister's wedding. Come in, said the man. Vera stepped inside. The house was large and spacious, but he noticed that there wasn't any furniture except for a desk set up on a dais. The seating area was covered in silk. There wasn't a single chair to sit on. The man climbed onto the dais and sat down on the silk-covered floor. I am Angar, he said. What kind of pots and pans do you need? Can I look at them and decide? Asked Vera. The moneylender pointed to a green door. Vera pushed it open and stepped inside a room filled with pots, pans, ladles, and cups. They were made of copper, bronze, and steel, and some were made of earthenware. Vera took a selection of bronze vessels and stepped out again. He put them on the floor and said, These are the ones I need. Very well, then. You are taking 10 pots. You must return them in the same condition in a week's time. You owe me 3 silvers now and 2 silvers when you return them. The moneylender wrote down the details in his notebook. Vera signed the agreement and handed 3 silvers to the moneylender, then took his pots and left. One week went by and then 2. A whole month had passed, and still Vera hadn't bothered to return the pots. I think we have waited long enough, said Suku. We should return the pots to the moneylender. Angar must have forgotten about them by now, said Vera. He hasn't sent anyone to get them. He doesn't do that, explained Suku. He simply charges more. Make sure you bring some extra silvers with you. Don't worry, my friend, said Vera. I have enough to keep Angar happy. He carefully lifted 20 pots and placed them in a cart. Suku drove the cart while Vera sat inside holding the pots. The boys arrived at the moneylender's house and unloaded the cart. On hearing them, Angar approached from inside. Where were you all this time? He yelled. You should have returned those pots weeks ago. I will have to charge you more now. Vera smiled. Well, kind sir, there is a small problem. You asked me to return the pots in the same condition, but I'm afraid that's not possible. Why not? Did you break them? How did you break bronze pots? I didn't break them, said Vera, but, you see, these pots gave birth to little ones. They were in a delicate state. I couldn't bring them until the little pots were strong enough to travel. Strong enough? Asked the moneylender. What are you talking about? See, dear sir, you didn't realize that the pots you lent me were with children, explained Vera. After the wedding was over, I left them in the pantry for just a few hours. Then I heard sounds of the pots rattling and clanging. When I rushed in to check, there were little pots in them. I don't believe this, said Angar. I knew you'd say that, said the prince. Here, I brought your pots with their little ones. They all belong to you rightfully. Angar counted the big pots. There were 10. He counted the small pots. There were 10. Well, what a neat profit. Thank you, young man, he said. You're very honest. Others would have hidden the little pots and never returned them. Even though Angar was happy with the little pots, he still charged Vera for the delay in returning the large ones. Vera forked over 5 silvers and returned home with Suku. I couldn't believe it when he actually stroked the little pots with love, said Suku. That man is so greedy. Let him enjoy his pots while he can, said Vera. His eyes glinted at the prospect of teaching Angar a lesson. No one mistreated his friend and got away with it. A week later, again dressed in ordinary clothes, Vera set off to see the moneylender. This time he needed no introduction. When he asked for 20 pots, the moneylender was more than happy to lend them. Please, take as many as you like. Remember to bring back any little ones, he said, giving him a receipt for 6 silver. Vera returned home and set the pots to the royal kitchen. They weren't going anywhere again. Suku and Vera continued with their lessons for a month before they remembered Angar and his pots. Now that we are done with our lessons, do you think Angar is ready for his? Suku asked. That sounds like fun, said Vera, and they discussed what they would tell Angar. Vera and Suku set off on their horses, but they dismounted before they reached Angar's house. They walked up to the door and knocked. When the door opened, Vera and Suku burst out crying. They sat on the doorstep and cried loudly. They wailed and screamed. The whole street came to watch. What's wrong with you? Asked Angar. Why are you crying? It's about the pots. I can't bear to tell you, said the prince. What about the pots? You see, they are bronze pots. They were very old. I know, they're my family heirlooms. Irreplaceable. If I had to buy them now, it would cost me at least 500 silvers. On hearing this, Vera and Suku sobbed more. Tell me what's wrong, Angar said. Do you remember these pots gave birth to the little ones last month? Asked Vera. I remember. What happened now? Well, the pots must have been very ill. Didn't you take care of them properly? After we put them in the pantry, there was no noise. I went to check on them, but unfortunately, they were all dead. Dead? Yes, the pots died yesterday at dawn, cried Vera. I'm so sorry. How can the pots die? They are made of bronze. Angar threw up his hands in despair. Well, if they can give birth to little bronze pots, can't they die too? Asked Suku. Angar had no answer to this. He hung his head in shame. The whole street laughed at his misery. From that day onward, Angar stopped being greedy. He charged fair interest, and he never unjustly took away things, or children, from anyone again. I'm going to read one more short story from this collection, and it's called The Unfortunate Case. It was a hot summer. No one in the kingdom studied during the hottest months. The sun scorched the earth. Lakes and streams dried up. The children were allowed to play outdoors only until noon, and then again at dusk. They had to remain indoors during the afternoon. Prince Bear and Suku spent their time in the mangroves near the palace. The grove was shady and cool. The boys climbed trees, chased dragonflies, and feasted on juicy mangoes. A river ran right through the grove that was fed from the beautiful hills of Himtuk, and it never dried up. After a long day of playing, the boys were tired. The sun was setting, and it was the right time to get something to eat. Let's go to the palace and raid the kitchen, said Vera. That's what we always do, said Suku. Why don't we go to the marketplace today? Prince Vera never turned down an opportunity to mingle with his people. He preferred to roam the streets rather than travel in style in a carriage. Let's do that, he said. So the boys set off to the market with a silver coin each. A guard dressed in plain clothes followed them at a discreet distance. The market was bustling with people. The stalls were filled with fruits, vegetables, sweets, and cold drinks. One man sold tender coconut water and another sold palm fruits. A woman sold buttermilk from a huge mud pot. People came to the market on horses and donkeys and in carts. The sound of animals mingled with the noise of the vendors and the bells from the temple nearby. Prince Vera enjoyed his visits to the market. It was much more exciting than the palace. Suku and Vera wandered around, trying on hats, eating mangoes, and drinking coconut milk. As they approached the village square, people were whispering. Suku spotted a man under a banyan tree. The man was dressed in rags and he carried a dirty cotton bag. What is it? The prince asked. Why are people whispering? Nothing, my friend. Let's go to the other street, Suku said, steering Vera away. Then, Prince Vera turned and saw the look of dismay on his friend's face. Vera burst out laughing. Suku had stepped in horse manure. He held up his leg and hopped around. You never watch where you walk, Vera said. It's not my fault, cried Suku. It is all because of the bad luck that man spreads. Why are you blaming a stranger, Suku? Asked Vera. Suku didn't reply. He approached a nearby shop and asked the shopkeeper for a pot of water to clean his shoes. Let's go, he said. Even after they returned to the palace, Prince Vera couldn't help thinking about the incident at the market. Are you going to tell me or not? He asked. Why did you blame the man from the market? I don't want to share bad luck, Vera, said Suku. Why don't you just let it go? I thought you knew me better, said Vera. I will tell you then, said Suku. The man's name is Dahuri. He spreads bad luck throughout the kingdom. How could someone spread bad luck? Asked Vera. What does he do? He does nothing. Just by seeing or talking to him, something bad will happen to you, Suku explained, still examining his shoes for specks of horse manure. I'm sure that is just superstition, said Vera. Superstition is when you believe in spirits and luck and stuff like that. Not at all. I stepped in horse manure as soon as I saw him. That was because you never watch where you walk, said Vera. You were slurping on the juicy mangoes. I don't agree, said Suku. It's all bad luck, and that man is spreading it. Prince Vera argued hard and long with Suku, but they got nowhere. Let's ask my father, he suggested. Don't do that, Vera. The king will want to meet this man. What if something bad happens to the king? A king should meet all his subjects, said the prince. He cannot discriminate. So they took their problem to the king. King Bahima listened carefully. Then he had a word with his ministers. Everyone agreed that Suku was right. This man Dahuri did spread bad luck. Interesting, said the king. I wish to see him tomorrow. The next morning, while the king was getting dressed, he looked out the window. The guards were bringing a poor, dirty man into the palace. Are you ready for the court, my dear? Asked the queen. The king turned swiftly and knocked over a glass of water. Careful, said the queen. Don't be in such a hurry. When the king sat down for breakfast, he was told that the royal chef was not feeling well. So the king was unable to eat his favorite meal, aloo paratha, bread with spicy potato filling. As the king approached the throne, he banged his leg and yelped in pain. Hurriedly, he sat down, wishing that he had not peeped out the window that morning and looked at that man. He wished he had listened to his ministers too, but he was the king. He had to meet everyone, even the man who spread bad luck. Bring in Dahuri, the king ordered. Prince Vera and Suku stood behind the ministers and watched the proceedings. Suku shut his eyes tight and refused to look at the man, even when Prince Vera nudged him. Dahuri, do you spread bad luck? Asked the king. I think I am filled with bad luck, your majesty, the man replied. I have no work, no friends, and no family. But I don't believe I bring ill to anyone else. But that's not true, said the king. I glanced at you early this morning from my window. I knocked over a glass of water. My favorite breakfast was not available, and I hurt my toes. Well, that could be carelessness, coincidence, and haste, your majesty. Are you calling me careless and hasty? Not at all, your majesty. It happens to the best of us, Hurry said. Some days are better than others. Prince Vera smiled. The man was intelligent, courageous, and articulate. It was unfortunate that no one gave him work. But I don't agree, said the king. I agree with my ministers that you indeed spread bad luck. I condemn you to 25 years in prison so that no one will ever suffer again. That's not fair, your majesty, said Hurry. I didn't do anything wrong. Prince Vera was shocked. He pulled Suku by his hand and stepped forward. Father, your majesty, he began, this is not fair. You are a child. Know your place, said the king. But you have always taught me to raise my voice against unfair things, said Vera. This is one of them. This man spreads bad luck, the king said. But I can present to you another man who spreads more bad luck than Hurry. Is there another one of these in my kingdom? Who is it? You, cried Prince Vera. You have managed to spread more bad luck than Hurry. Everyone in the court gasped. They looked at the prince with horror. Suku stepped back and moved behind the curtains. Vera, mind your words, said the king. Please listen to me, father. You glanced into Hurry this morning and you had these minor accidents. You blame him for all your bad luck. But Hurry didn't even look at you this morning. He was just coming over to see you. Yet you have sentenced him to 25 years in prison. Hurry looked up and smiled. If you believe Hurry caused your hardship, then it is just superstition, said Vera. Hurry never intended to harm you. But what you did to Hurry is deliberate. You want him to rot in prison. It seems to me that you spread more bad luck and ill will than he does, father. So when Prince Vera says that what his father did was deliberate, he means that he's saying that he thinks that his father did it on purpose and really meant to do that. King Bahima closed his eyes. He nodded slowly. Then he stepped down from his throne and hugged his son. You're right, my son. I was swayed by my emotions. I committed an injustice. Thank you for speaking the truth and speaking it loudly. The king walked back to his throne and looked at the court. Here in this court, we almost fell into the traps of superstition. I apologize to Hurry and for my hasty judgment. I am thankful to the prince, your majesty, said Hurry, and I am grateful to you for heeding to the voices in your court. May your rule flourish and prosper. Hurry, you are a free man, said the king. The minister will help you find a job and a place to stay. The court adjourned, and Suku peeped through the curtain. You were very brave, Vera. I just stood up for the right thing, said Prince Vera, and that's what princes do.